Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second Commune podcast on Metroid Prime Federation Force. My name is Daniel, and I am joined by the two other esteemed members of the Galactic Federation's elite unit, aka the Federation Force. The first of those people is Greg. Greg, please say your name.
Greg.
Very good. I'll give you a one medal out of three for that one. Adrian, it's your turn. Say your name.
Adrian.
Okay, that's probably a two. That's
Uh,
probably a two. We are gathered here today to discuss variation within Federation Forces single and multiplayer campaigns. Single and multiplayer campaigns, they're the same campaign. You can play with one, two, three, or four players. Myself, Adrian, and Greg played together as a trio. In many of the reviews for Metroid Prime Federation Force, many reviewers praised the game's the variety within the missions and how in each mission you'd be doing, a different activity and there'd be a different type of gameplay, and that's really what we're here to discuss today. So before we recorded, Adrian began organizing the missions into categories, which I think we can talk about now. So, Adrian, would you like to run us through a few of these categories and we'll talk our way through them as we go?
all right. So one thing I want to be sure to clarify is that I tried to categorize them based on the scope of the mission and not so much the moment-to-moment gameplay or the locks and keys, what you do from room to room in order to progress. So
You've tried to categorize them based on the large scope, not on the small scope.
right, kind of the main idea of the entire mission. So first you
Okay.
have standard missions. Go in, shoot stuff, occasionally search around and get a key, that sort of thing, of which includes the first, third, fifth, and 19th missions.
Okay, so that's outpost, smokestack, evacuation,
Excavation.
so excavation and incursion. Okay. So also just to clarify about the minute-to-minute gameplay. So what you're saying, right, is that although a mission may be like 90% in one category and 10% in another, for the sake of clarity, we're just going to say it's in the 90. It's in the category where most of its gameplay fits into the one type. Is that correct?
Right.
Yep. Okay.
So
So,
after the standard missions, I made a separate category just to include missions that involve the spheres because they are their own, separate lock and key, and they also identify the mission. The big one being hardball, and then you see spheres come up again in slipstream. That would be missions.
So hardball is the second mission in the game, right?
Yeah.
And can you talk a bit about what, actually, Greg, can you talk a bit about what this type of mission involves?
What the ball missions involve?
Yeah, like what's the point of these missions? Why are
So
they? Why have we given them their own category?
these missions involve manipulating balls by shooting them. So in hardball, you'll have to steer spheres into little like pool pockets, I guess you'd like billiard pockets, I guess you would call them. And once you sink all of the spheres in an area, you get to move on. And in the other one, what's the name? In Slipstream, you have to guide the balls along to put them on a catapult device so that then you can shoot at a boss. And so in both of these missions, the main interesting thing about the mission is having to steer these spheres, even though in both missions you have enemies to kill, and in hardball, not every room is about steering spheres. I think Hardball in particular is a good example of how the game handles variation in that, like, we would all say that the spheres are the interesting part, but not every part of the stage is about working with those balls. So these categories just get at, like, what sticks out to us as conspicuous about the gameplay and does not, like, it's not a hard and fast rule about what the mission is.
Right. And that's something you notice a lot, is that a lot of these missions don't exactly fit into very clean categories, and you'll certainly notice this with the later category they bring up. Just another note, I wanted to throw in convergence in there because I forgot to, because that does involve a sphere, and it's what the game has actually been building up to.
You mean
Yeah.
Samus, right? Like
Yeah.
like where you're shooting Samus in her morph ball mode at electric walls.
Yeah.
You know what's
100%.
interesting is that in Hardball and Slipstream, the spheres are pretty small. They're easy for one player to move around, and their weight is much lesser than the blast ball spheres. Whereas in Convergence, Samus starts out pretty big, and even with the three of us focusing, and I think we had Shouty with us.
Yep.
The four of us focusing on her had a harder time because she was so big, and because I guess the game has Newtonian physics in some sense.
Yeah, there's also the fact that, I mean, it was a different kind of challenge as well, right? So Convergence is sort of like a boss level, but the boss, which is Samus in Morphle mode, does, she is also a sphere that you can shoot around, but you have to first attack her weak point, and then once you've done that for a bit, then she'll go into a mode where you can, freely shoot her around.
Yeah.
And so when you can shoot her around like a billiards ball, then that's where you have to push her into the electric boundary of the arena. However, you've only got a limited amount of time to do that. How could the three of us, quickly push her in the right direction within a limited amount of time? And once you've hit one of the boundaries, then it loses its electricity. So you then have to readjust and shoot the ball at fewer. You have fewer and fewer walls that you can shoot her into. Whereas I think with hardball, it's more a case of, well, at least in the normal campaign, you've got plenty of time to move the ball, down to the other end. So there's a bit of variation. Oh, and the slipstream, you've got, like you're on this giant float, and you've got these these projectiles, these purple blobs that are being cast onto your ship, and they will break bits of the ship. So over time you have less room to maneuver the balls to their catapults.
You also have some ball variation there in that the ones you launch personally stay around forever. The ones dropped by enemies will eventually explode.
Yeah. And then
so within that mission, there's two types, right? So there's the within Slipstream, there's two types of balls. There's the ones that that spawn on one side of the ship that you push over to the other, and they you have forever to move them down into the catapult. And then you've got the ones that the what are they called now? The flying troopers. They'll drop purple balls onto the ship, and they will detonate and explode within a short period of time.
Yeah. So a trend that you'll notice with the missions involving the spheres is that the timer or the time limit is getting stricter with each one. So from hardball, where you have no time limit, to slipstream with a limited time limit for the purple balls, and side in a timely enough manner that the warship doesn't ram into you, because that is the time limit for that one. And in convergence, which is the limited amount of time that Samus is depowered. Another note for convergence is that in the later, like once you get to, I believe, the third round, Samus actually does start moving the ball around on her own, which go ways into messing up your shots when you're trying to knock her into the electric gates.
So there's a bit of resistance then as well.
Yeah, bit of interplay there.
Mm. So it's not just each other's shots that we have to be wary of, but it's also the natural skew of the ball itself. There's
Yeah.
um, undo our work. I'd
Yep.
like to actually step back and talk about the standard missions a bit more because I think we went through that quite quickly.
Mhm.
Um, Greg, how would you characterize these missions?
They feel like Metro, like a microcosm of Metroid Prime, where you get a small area to walk around, and there'll be, here or there will be a branching room, and you can also talk to computers to read about like the life on the planet or something like that. But for the most part, it's just going through room by room and killing space pirates.
Mm. So arena to arena with a few little interludes and some scans in the game. There aren't many scans in the game. Certainly not on the level of the Metroid Prime trilogy, but there are a few of those as well. And so, Adrian, can you talk a bit about how what this gameplay is like? I mean, we did talk about it a bit in the previous podcast when we were talking about the spatial and the timing dynamics. But if you could talk about how these situations are set up and how the enemies are organized on together, just briefly.
Right. There's a pretty big gap from the standard missions. In fact, of the ones that I categorized, it's between missions 5 all the way up to 19. So you get elements of those standard missions peppered throughout the various other missions, which each are also doing their own thing and to challenge you in various ways. All the way up to incursion, though, which that one is just a straight room to room battle on the enemies.
A
One of the
gauntlet.
major, yeah, gauntlet. One of the major ways that the encounters progress is the difficulty of the enemies themselves, the layout of the arenas. More arenas that take place in open space to where you get that room of convergence. The first room, where it's just like maybe a few pillars, a lot of them are on higher ground and you're on the low ground, and enemies just surround you on all sides. So
Mm.
that's the trend of variation that you see throughout the standard missions and you know the brawls.
Definitely, this game has enough variation just in fighting enemies that could have been its own game.
Yeah, there's so many enemies just in the Metroid Prime games alone that they could have used to fill out a whole shooter campaign with this. Like, there's no zoomers. There's no well, technically the elites are kind of like the ink smashers in Metroid Prime 2, but there's no ings. There's no pirates with shields or anything like that. There's a lot of enemy types they could use
Mm.
that they could to fill out a whole shooter campaign if they wanted to.
So within the standard within the standard missions, and I'd probably say that that the more shooting missions, they stress on the shooting gameplay. Um, so in the set of missions, one element of variation is that you have harder enemy types, and you also have different combinations of enemy types as well. So harder enemies, different enemies, and then you have different waves of enemies as well. So you'll clear a few enemies, like more next wave will come in, and so there's the enemy types, there's the composition of enemies, there's there's the waves of enemies, and there's also the composition of enemies, and that is the composition of enemies being what enemies are paired together. So I think in the first room in incursion being a level being a mission that's later in the game. In that first room, you've got what are the flying little creatures called?
Eye flyers.
Yeah, so you've got like eye flyers, and they're laid, and so they start off, and not long after they enter the room, you've got like your generic space pirates, that come in and flank you on the sides. So those two enemies are layered, and then afterwards, I think you've got like the got like harder pirates, and then I think there's a bit of a lull period, and then they bring in another set of the eye flies and the elite pirates. And so yeah, it's really those three elements of enemy variation: the enemy type, the number of waves, the frequency of waves, and you've also got the composition of enemies as well. So which enemies are paired up together.
They even do that with the boss of this level, where you fight the Ice Titan, and as you whittle down his health, different enemies, more complicated enemies, begin to layer with them. From the Zerberats to the freaking Cryptorixes, whatever they're called, the roly polies.
Yeah, the Grifterixes.
Okay.
Yep. Roly Poly just rolls off the tongue, but Cryptorix just maybe does much.
Yep. So those are the standard missions, and then the missions involving spheres. After that, we have the outside mech missions, of which there's only two. Infiltration, insurrection, naturally. Those two missions, though, however, play out very differently. With infiltration, it's more stealth, and then once you pass the stealth section, it's now a platforming section. They even changed the camera and the controls to accommodate the platforming. And then you escape back out, and I actually forgot to write this in, it becomes a survival mission where you wait for the extraction pod to drop in, but as that's happening, space pirates are swarming in trying to kill you, and you have to hold out until the extraction point drops in. Whereas with insurrection, that one's a bit different. You're outside of the pod, sure, but the first phase, you have to work your way into the center, where there's these fireballs around. So it's sort of like the stealth, I guess, but it's more like evading things. And then each player progressively, slowly but surely, each player will get their mech back, not all at once, and they have to defend the players outside of their mechs as they make their way through. So in that way, insurrection is also like a defend mission, which we'll get to later. As each player gets their mech, towards the end, it then becomes a regular all-out brawl with the space pirates.
And so in Interaction, you've got this the staggered acquirement of mechs, right? So like, so as you're saying, like we all start out in mechs, and then we all lose our mechs, and then player by player gradually will get their mechs back. And I really love that mission, right? Because it's like there's we start off and it's like, okay, Adrian will take the mech, and then it's Greg and I. So Adrian uptakes Greg and myself, and then later on it'll be like just myself without a mech, and you guys are looking after me. And so I think that this mission really plays up the different player roles, and that was really fun.
Yeah,
right. That's one of those missions where players that are playing on uneven levels or have different abilities, and that's a level of variation that does not come out at all if you're playing single player.
Yeah, absolutely. And infiltration, I feel, is a bit more of a tutorial / sort of like a obstacle course. So so it's a bit like so you kind of parachute in to the main area, like you take the flying fox in your mech down to the main area. You exit your mech, then there's like a bit of a platformy, like a short platformy section, a short stealth section in a corridor, a larger stealth section in a large room with several space pirates, and then it's obstacle course there and back with a bit of folded design. And so it's kind of like, I think on the main variation between the two is that all of the players are on an even playing field. So we're all out of the mech, like we're all either in or out of the mech at the same time together. And it's more of like the obstacle course, whereas insurrection, again, you've got your staggered mech acquirements, and therefore, you have a really fun way of playing with roles. And yeah.
I guess part of that is that in insurrection, you rely on your teammates, whereas you don't need to care about what other people are doing in infiltration.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And they actually tune insurrection so that there'll be these large rooms where the two players outside of their mech, these little, chibi little um, Galactic Federation soldiers are just like are running around the outside along this sort of like raised thin platform, and there's these and there's space pirates, flying pirates that'll just come up out of nowhere, and then the chibi characters then have a little area that they can hide, sort of like a cover section, and then Adrian will come in, dashing hero, and shoot the space pirates, and we will like hang low, and yeah, and then we'll go to the next bit, and more space pirates will come up, and Greg and I will hide, and then Adrian will come in and shoot the pirates away, and they actually tune it so that you've got the different the different routes, so that I don't think that the chibi I don't think that the Federation soldiers can access the area that the mech can access, but they have their own route, like their own little tunnel that they follow, which the mechs can't follow.
Yeah.
Anything more that we wanted to say on the outside mech missions?
No. Next are boss missions, which I'll just briefly mention the names, but we could easily spend a podcast talking about what the bosses do, or maybe save that for the next one. These missions are Mission 7, Cauldron, 12, Last Stand, 14, Tremor, 21, The Core, and 22, Convergence. Of those, I think the only one maybe kind of special to point out would be The Last Stand, where there's an extra lose condition. So aside from everyone being killed, if the boss reaches the end and destroys a tower, you fail. So there is a time limit on that one.
The boss missions generally tend to favor like use of the gyro in different ways as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
We can take those.
Yeah, I think another podcast.
Right.
Oh, the next category is our personal favorite.
Yep, Bait and Trap, which contains only one mission. That's Mission 4, Containment. You'll probably hear a lot of bitterness from us, but that was because Containment gave us a lot of grief in trying to get all 3 gold and platinum medals.
So that's one of those sandboxy missions.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a few non-linear levels in Federation Force. Containment is one of them. Containment is also very different from them in that you try to, as I named the category, bait the Ice Titans into a cage, lock them in, and trap them.
Yeah, so you shoot them. So Ice Titans are enemies, like the big giant. What is an animal that's similar?
The boss of the first mission.
Yeah. But what's an animal? What's an animal that's similar to an Ice Titan? Like a bear.
Oh, the bad guy from Rudolph.
Yeah,
the Abominable Snowman.
Abominable Snowman.
Yeah,
That's
maybe like
from real life.
Abominable Snowman, an angry polar bear. Basically, like you use your charge shot to get their attention, and then they run over and follow you, and then you have to lure them into a cage, which, as Adrian was saying, you then lock them in.
What's really telling about how they had this game functions is that to interact with this creature and convince it to go into a cage, you're shooting it. Like, you interact with everything in this game by shooting it.
Yeah.
Or, there's really rare missions where you have to push something, but most of the time you're shooting at everything.
Yeah.
Yep,
or,
that's right.
I guess pick something up.
Shall we withhold our grievances with containment until a later podcast? Shall we contain our grief, or shall we just... Yeah, I think we'll leave it for now, but
we'll save it for we talk about.
So we'll save it for later.
Scores and things like that.
Yep. So that is three medals on hard mode with 3 players on containment.
Yeah.
Put it in your notebook. Look forward to it. Okay.
So the next category.
Search and destroy.
Yep, search and destroy, of which it only has one mission, which is dust off. Another example of a non-linear level in the game, where you can go in any order you like to destroy the towers.
you can't go in anywhere you like because certain ones open up, right?
Yeah, it's weird. You can sort of go anywhere you like, but then again, not really because so there are more than one available at a time, but certain open up due to certain other ones that you already destroyed. It's kind of like a web if you think about it, or a tree
Yeah.
branch.
And
Yeah.
like containment, there will be pirate ships that come in periodically.
Yeah,
So it's kind of like you do have a bit of choice, but it's sort of like restricted freedom in a way. Yeah, yeah, as you were saying, like you know, if you think of it like a tree, like if the map's like a tree, if you move in one area and you kill something, and you complete, what is it? You activate the pods in one area, then that will trigger another area that you can open up. But you always have access to more than one pod at a time,
yeah,
so you
Yeah.
do have that freedom. Um,
With us trying to make the time bonus in that level, that kind of screwed us over until I think the way we beat that was just picked one person to follow so that we would all be going to the same thing to activate so
yeah,
that we wouldn't just be activating random ones and then it requires all of the players to activate before it does anything.
yeah, which is why it's better for which is why it was better for us to go in groups. Otherwise, we're all we're all filling in bits and pieces here, but we can't actually, we might not activate three beacons on the pod. So,
Yeah.
mm,
So the next category is deliver and defend, and this one probably has not this one probably this one has the most missions. Um, you have well, this is again kind of going to where not all the missions fit cleanly. So the main example of this is hardball, where towards the end, where you grab I forgot what that sphere is called, but you're supposed to grab this special object and take it with you to the end. You can't complete the mission unless you bring that and take it to your cargo.
mm. Wait,
So
so
that's
it's all about sorry, so it's all about delivering and defending. So that is, you got to move something from A to B, and you got to ensure that it doesn't break, i.e., gets
yeah.
shot at or
Well,
gets dropped off a cliff.
the one in hardball doesn't break, but you do drop it if you take hits. So that's why you gotta be extra careful. And
Mm.
also emphasizes the more cooperative aspect of the game, where the player carrying the ball cannot shoot because they're already holding the shoot button in order to carry it. So the other players have to, help out.
Yeah, this class of mission often asks the other players to help out because the one player is disabled, but in hardball, it doesn't come out so much because there's those clear lanes where you can avoid the falling boulders.
Mhm.
Whereas in later missions, you'll have enemies jumping up on the person,
Yeah.
and they can't really do anything about that.
So, Greg, what you were saying is that the player who picks up the item or who moves the item that needs to be delivered, or at least in the case of hardball, they use they forfeit the use of the beam then, and so they become, so they can't defend themselves, and that again changes the player roles. But I'm
Yeah,
thinking, Adrian, as you introduce on the next few levels that fit this category, it's interesting to talk about. I think it'd be interesting to look at the different items that are being delivered, because it's not always about moving the same thing, is it?
Yeah. So the other missions we have are mission 9 Blunder, 13 Phantom, 15 Motherload, and 17 Station. So with Blender and Motherload, you have objects that can be destroyed. In Blender, you're pushing a cart through the level. Naturally, you can't let the cart blow up, so you will occasionally have to stop or transport it to one of these little safe zones so the electrical storms don't destroy it, and make sure you keep pirates from shooting at it. Hell, the safe zones themselves need to be defended because the space pirates will shoot at those too.
Mm, that's right.
Another interesting thing about Blender is the fact that all players can cooperate into moving the card around. So it's not just one person carries it and then everyone else defends them. It's no, we can all move this thing at once, and each player
right.
determines how fast it can go. So
Yeah, the speed of the card is dynamic. When you have all four people pushing it, it's really fast. But then if you have one person pushing it and then the other three are defending him, then it will be a lot slower.
yeah, And in the middle of that, it's also very on and off because occasionally someone's going to need to go out and switch the trail that the cart is moving on, or shoot at a rock that's in the way, or a pillar, or deal with
Mm.
the hidden boss that's in the level if someone goes off to look for mods.
Yeah, so just to clarify a bit, so you're pushing this cart which is on like a train track, and like the old train tracks, you've got the handle that you need to go out and activate if you want to switch from a left to a right hand track and so on. So there's that, there's enemies, there's other things that you have to deal with at the same time that at the same time that players can be in front of or the back of the cart and be pushing it forward.
With Phantom, now Phantom is definitely one that was a bit iffy to put in this category, but I decided to put it here anyways because Phantom, you have these things called architects. There's three balls that run around the level. This is another non-linear level, by the way, much like Dust Off and Containment, where they run around. You have to chase them down. Often, do your best to plan with the other players to sort of corner it off to shoot it, and then pick it up and carry it to the exit. In the meanwhile, while you're trying to deliver it, you have to defend the player carrying it from being shot at and letting the architect escape again from the
Hmm.
camouflage pirates and the other dangers.
They're sort of like robot balls, so it's like so they're like these spherical, creatures that that can fly around, that float and move around quite quickly. But once you shoot them, then they just become spheres, similar to in the second mission, Hardball, where where when you pick it up, you forfeit. Like it's a spherical object that you pick up using your charge beam, and you therefore forfeit use of your charge beam.
So earlier I mentioned that for the outside the mech missions in infiltration, the players are much more or don't rely on each other at all, whereas in infiltration you're forced to rely on each other. But and in these missions, I feel like there's a parallel going on where in Hardball you can easily carry the object by yourself and avoid whatever comes at you, whereas in Phantom, you to deliver the object you get funneled through this. There's an exit to the sandbox into your ship, and you get funneled through that one door, and enemies are all up on you when you're going through that door. So I can't imagine what it's like in single player. It just seems like it requires you to have some external protection.
I haven't tried single player either, but those camo pirates are pain, a pain to deal with.
So going through the missions within this category, Hardball has you carrying like a spherical ball. Blender has you pushing a cart on a track. Phantom's on the ball. Mother Load is a cart on a track, and Infestation is a Metroid egg, which is similar to a ball. So really, there's two types. You've got something on a rail that you're pushing along, or you've got something, like a spherical object that you're holding in your hand.
Just one thing is with Motherload, that cart does come equipped with a turret, so you can blow things up, blow shit up.
Yeah, in Motherload, isn't it that one person sits in it and drives it?
Yep.
Which is way different than players having to commit to drive, right.
Yeah.
So in Blender, it having to deal with the cart is like limits your abilities, whereas in Motherload, the guy who gets to drive the cart gets to blow everything up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Motherload even feels a bit like like a shooting mission or a turret sequence even.
Yeah. It's literally all rails.
Yeah.
The next category are what I call survival missions, and the reason I call that is because it makes me think of survival mission Resident Evil 5, where you're stuck to a single area and you try to fend off enemies as best you can. These missions are Black Hole, Slipstream, and High Tower, 10, 16, and 18 respectively.
Cool. So, Greg, tell us a bit about this category, survival.
You're stuck in one place and enemies will approach you, and it's like a. It's not so much a tower defense, it's like a tower defense except without the tower. Like, isn't it just that you're stuck in one place and there's waves of enemies?
Yeah, in High Tower, you literally are on the tower.
Mm.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess that is a tower defense.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which one of these is the Ice Planet stage where you protect the computer?
Oh, that would be uplink. I put that one under protect because the difference with that one is you have to defend it for a limited amount of time, whereas in the survival missions,
What
technically
about
High Tower, it is a time.
Yeah, high tower.
Oh,
Yeah,
shit.
that's right. Yeah.
All right,
So
let me just
survival is more about you staying alive. Protect is more about you protecting something else.
Where there's an external health bar that you're worried about.
Yeah, the
That's
thing is,
right.
High
Yes.
Tower does have that where you are protecting the drill platform.
Yep. So should we move high tower over to the next category, which is protect?
Yep, I shall do that.
Okay. So as you do that, Adrian, I presume that we'll share these wonderful notes with our readers, with our listeners, so that they can play along at home, which I'm sure they would be doing by now. Otherwise, they'd probably be lost. Um, so, Black Hole and Slipstream are the two missions. So, Slipstream is the mission that takes place on a floating open platform ship. It's the same one that you have to push the balls over to the catapult.
The trend of variation here is that between Black Hole and Slipstream is that your attention is being divided between more stuff. In Black Hole, you have enemies across another platform, and then they try to jump onto yours. There's two different planks that they can do that from. So you want to take them out from a distance, and then deal with the ones that invade your side of the field and try to flank you. And at the same time, you're also trying to deal with these drop ships trying to drop these giant missiles. So you're going to want to focus on shooting them out of the air. So that mission in particular emphasizes your attention between, multiple things. And it also emphasizes, player roles in that, hey, I'll do this thing. You go shoot at this other, while you go shoot at this other thing, and we'll try our best to, defend you while you're looking up and not really looking at enemies that are coming around you.
That's also how we worked out Slipstream, isn't it?
Yep, Slipstream is the same situation where you're dividing attention between shooting the balls into the catapults, shooting out the bombardments that the warship drops in so it doesn't create too many holes while you're trying to get the balls to the side. At the same time, arrow troopers that drop purple bombs, which you at the same time can also do this cool thing where you load those bombs, they drop into your ship and throw a catapult it right back at them. That's pretty awesome. Yep. And of course, any other enemies, dropship that drop space pirates, and you got to deal with those bastards too. So, more things that divide up your attention that you need to deal with.
Yeah, it's almost like in Slipstream, you've got two types of gameplay at once. One being survival, i.e., you're making sure that the ship doesn't fall to pieces as it's being shot at, and the other one being to move the spherical balls onto the catapults. And so we approached this problem by having, how do we do it now? Who was who, Greg?
Well, I would always shoot the enemies because I'm terrible at the spheres. And I think if initially you and Adrian would both push the spheres onto the catapults, but we when we approached the hard mode of the mission, the requirements got so strict that it was just Adrian focusing on using the bombs to kill the enemy.
When we had a setup where Greg was, covering any incoming fire, and Adrian and I were just pushing the balls over to the catapults. Number one is that we finished on the mission too quickly and we didn't farm enough points. I think number two is that, because the two of us were in the middle of pushing the existing balls to the catapults, when an enemy would drop one of those purple balls, we'd both already be busy. Like we wouldn't be ready to. We wouldn't be in a state where we'd be ready to respond quickly, and you'd have to respond quickly because those purple balls would detonate quite rapidly. So
Right. So
mm,
that has two effects. One is that when a oh wait, do purple balls exploding shoot out the floor, or do they just explode without anything?
oh, I'm not sure, Adrian.
What
Oh no.
the purple bombs blow up pieces in the floor.
Okay, and then there's also that the bonus objective requirement on that is to not let any balls explode, which includes the bombs that enemies drop on you.
That's right.
You
And
sound
so,
very happy about that.
oh, we were frustrated with that for a while because I think 2 or 3 times we completed that mission. There were no purple balls that exploded on our ship, or like no balls whatsoever that exploded on our ship. And
Yeah,
yet we didn't satisfy the conditions, so we were a bit confused about that for a while. But we kept at it, and eventually we got through. So then, what we did once how we changed our strategy was that we had um, Adrian would push the balls into their respective spots, so push them onto the catapult. Greg, you would defend the ship, and I would play a dynamic role where um, I would either push balls or help Greg, and that way, we could that way because I was like a bit more flexible, we could then adjust to the changing situation so that we can respond to things when they happen as well. Because yeah, if there's too many balls in play, then and two people, and if there's 3 people who are already actively busy, and then you just add another ball, that's too much to juggle. So we try to keep one free hand. If you liken it to the metaphor of juggling balls, which is apt.
yeah.
Anyway, Adrian.
All right. So the next category is I consider protect, even though right. There's only 2 missions for this category. It's the end of uplink. Otherwise, it plays out pretty much like a standard mission. And the main deal with that is there's a computer terminal that you want to defend, and the space pirates will come out and try to blow it up. You have to do it for a certain amount of time. In Hightower, it's the same deal. You're on a drill platform. You want to defend it for a certain amount of time from enemies coming to destroy it.
So the basic idea is that you want to defend something and it has its own health, and the enemies can attack that and will attack that particular object.
Yeah, and the main thing is that it's not a kill everyone mission. It's a defend it for whatever amount of time mission, which is an important distinction to make because in some of them they actually do go on forever.
Yeah, yeah. What we found, right, is that when we played with, I think at one point we let Adrian, you let a random join our, like a random online player join our match by accident as we were doing uplink, and so that was quite funny. And so what we found is with a fourth player, we were able to progress through the waves quicker. But once we'd finished where we'd previously arrived at as 3 players, and we still had a bit more time on the clock, more enemies would come forward. So as you said, Adrian, it's not like a set quota; it just seems to go on and on.
Yeah,
Which allows you, if you're able to clear the waves faster, you get more points.
Yeah. So a bit of scalability built in.
right. Now, a major trend of variation I want to point out between uplink and Hightower is in uplink, the computer is to a wall and enemies are coming from one side. But in Hightower, they come in all directions, and they're from a extremely far off distance, which pressures you to lead your shots more because they have to travel. Your bullets have to travel such a long distance, and that's another example where this is unique to Federation Force because of the fact that bullets are actual objects that need to move through space. It's not hit and scan.
Actually, I think we should clarify that a bit. So with uplink, so the computer's at the back of a room, you're in the room, and you're in an arena. But on Hightower, you're on a raised platform. So Whereas in Uplink, you're face to face with the space pirates. In Hightower, you don't have access. Well, you can jump off the platform, but the ground below is covered in gas, and one of the extra mission objectives is not to get hit by the gas. So, as you're saying, Adrian, because of that distance, because of that physical separation, it requires more of that lovely timing, leading your shots, understanding enemy animation. So it's a much more challenging task.
You also have to your map is helpful because you can't guard the bottom of the drill. Naturally, you need to catch enemies farther away before they get too close, which means mastering use of your map.
Absolutely.
Whereas in uplink, everyone will be above you. You'll see them clearly, and you can put your back to a wall, so there will be nobody coming from behind.
Yeah, that's right. Like you kind of do shoulder to shoulder, right? Get your 3 or 4 crew members shoulder to shoulder and covering the front. But I still found that in uplink it was useful to look at the map sometimes, if you were to move away from your post.
Yeah, this is just another point for me to mention with the shootouts, is that the bottom screen, the map, becomes that much more important so that you can be aware of enemies that may be behind you, especially in those more open arenas where they come around from multiple angles. Anyways, those are all the categories really. I did have, Chase and Deliver but that was basically Mission 13 Phantom, but I decided to put that into Deliver and defend with that one stipulation that you have to chase them, unlike the other ones where you just go there and pick it up. There's also another category for sandboxy levels, but I already mentioned them throughout.
Mm. Yeah, I think the sandboxy levels, you know, whereas everything else, all of the other categories that we've discussed so far are usually shaped by the mission objectives and other things. Sandboxy levels are just, obviously a consequence of the level design and having larger areas.
Yeah, each of these, the 3 non-linear levels, are in a different objective category that I put them in. So that's another interesting note.
That the level structure varies even outside of the objective structure.
So these categories, they give us a way of understanding the Federation Forces campaign, and that is, I'm to say that there are how many categories? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are 22 missions, but there are 9 different types of gameplay. So, and each of these categories are quite distinct, as we've already discussed. So it's no wonder then that Federation Force, despite all of the unfair criticism that it warranted, that it was still noted for its variation. So, and our discussion goes to that point. So, what I wanted to just briefly just talk about is what allows for such variation in the campaign. We were talking before, and my conclusion was that basically, so you've got 2 things that affect or 2 sets of things that affect the type of gameplay that in the missions. You've got the objective. So the objective sort of sets it sets the win condition, and it's a framing device for the gameplay, and that's the main sort of hard force that will affect the type of gameplay. But of course, you've also got the enemies, the environment, and the game elements as well. And these 3 things also affect what type of gameplay you will get. That's reasonably obvious, I suppose. But as we were looking through the mission types, we sort of made this observation that in regards to game elements, and that basically Federation Force will often use new or external game elements beyond the simple shooting of enemies. It'll use external elements to broaden the range of gameplay. Did you guys want to quickly run through what some of those things are?
one thing is that you have an outside of the mech mode, which isn't triggered manually. Instead, there's like scripted parts where you get kicked out of the mech, and you could easily remove that feature from the game, and nobody would notice except that 2 missions were missing.
Yeah, so it's not part of the core, of the core moving and shooting of the game. It's actually a separate system.
I actually I also wanted to note that in Metroid Prime you have a scan visor, whereas in Federation Force you have machines you can walk up to that serve you scans. So you can't like walk around the world and scan things. You have to wait to be prompted with something to scan. And the same is true with the outside the mech parts, where in Metroid Prime you could go into your ball at any time and try to apply it where it would be useful. Instead, the game, when they want to have that size separation, will tell you, okay, now you're in small mode. And I think that's a key difference in how those two games work, where Federation Force will dictate what happens much more strongly and keeps a greater
True.
focus.
That's very true, Greg. But you can also say that in the Prime games, so in the main Prime trilogy, there are individual side-scroller perspective sections for the morph ball, and so in a sense, the camera perspective and the sort of the way that those sections are separated is also like a way of dictating or saying that it's the separate type of gameplay. But I guess to your point, it's in Metroid Prime, like say in Metroid Prime One, in the Chozo Ruins, in the main area, you've got like the half pipe as well, and so that area has a bit of morph ball, and it has a bit of like regular through the visor perspective and shooting, scanning gameplay. So it's got those in the one area, whereas in Federation Force, it's like the extra mode of navigation is completely separate, except for in Blast Ball.
Right.
Except for in Blast Ball, right? Yes, because in Blast Ball you can be ejected from the mech at any point. Anyway, let's keep rolling. So another one, Adrian, is the spheres, of course.
Yeah, the spheres are another external element for changing things up, and then they have specific blocks for them. Also, just for shooting them into the catapults. That's another example. You also have missile keys, which brief. I'll search through the rooms, blow up crates, and find the thing. More exploring. You also have containment, which has its own unique lock, and that this lock only works if you put another enemy in it and keep them in there when it closes.
But what's interesting there is that the enemy is one that you see in other missions.
Yeah.
But you can't kill them.
Yeah.
Right. They repurpose an enemy and say instead of killing it, you have to trap it.
Yeah. A bit of the variation also has to do with the mission structure, or the locks and keys, what you're supposed to do in order to complete it. And that's where you get the bring X object to X location lock and key, or the defend Y object for Y amount of time lock and key.
Absolutely. You've also got obviously the items that you need to deliver from one point to the other, whether that be the Metroid eggs, the cart on a rail, or the what's that thing called, Adrian? The spherical ball you pick up.
The architect.
Yeah, and you've got the architect as well. So you've got those things.
That's not a good name for that, by the way.
Oh, it's a horrible name, isn't it? How can a ball be an architect? I don't get it. And then for protect, you've got health bars attached to particular objects in the environment. So so you've got a handful of separate game elements which are added to the strong existing core of moving and shooting, and they really they help to emphasize they help to facilitate like a different range of interaction from mission onto mission. And of course in the future we will talk more about the different player roles, player relationships,
Right.
and we'll talk a bit more about the levels in detail. We do have, and we will provide this to our listeners, a sort of an outline of the from mission 1 to 22, the sort of transition between the different types of gameplay. But I'm not sure that there's really much that we can take out of it at this stage. Do you guys have any thoughts on this?
You're never focused on any one task. Like the game might develop a certain trend. Uh, like there's the two sphere missions, and one is definitely harder than the other. But or there's the three sphere missions actually,
Mm.
but they're never next to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are never two of the same category of missions back to back.
Right. The game is often balancing between them because in each of these lists, each of the ways that it's categorized them, like not one of them has two missions that are back to back. Not a single
Mhm.
one, except not even the boss ones.
Wait,
Except
wait,
for maybe the boss ones, which is the core convergence, but
right near the end of the game.
that makes a little more sense.
Yeah, that's true because you're building up to the finale.
So I just want to make one note. Well, I might bring this up in the next podcast too, but one note that I do know, aside from obviously enemies getting harder and what I said before about the different shootouts to where the ways the arenas are laid out to be more open, to where more enemies can surround you, and what Daniel said about enemy composition, there's that. There's also where the missions themselves want to divide your attention between multiple things, such as in Black Hole and then the Ancient Skiff. And you'll find that occurring all the way up to the really the last one is Mission Slipstream, is where you see the pinnacle of that dividing your attention between multiple things.
Mm. Cool. I think we've had a pretty good run. I don't know if there's much more. Let's have a look. So we've talked a lot about the variation and the types of gameplay within the campaign. I just wanted to hear if there were any concluding thoughts. So, Greg.
Metroid Prime Federation Force has a whole lot of variation in its design space, and going from mission to mission, you would never take anything for granted. And I think the best example of that is the outside of the mech portions, where they get a lot of variation by giving you different things to interact with, but then suddenly your main method of playing, of just like moving around the environment, changes. So like I, I think the rule of thumb for this game is nothing is sacred except, well, nothing is sacred.
Adrian?
Right. So one of the things I like about Federation Force is that there is a much more clear sense of progression, and that things are getting harder, but it's also, well, it takes a little bit to identify how things are progressing, but it is there if you look at the game design and the level design closely enough, and how the missions are structured, to where I'm not really getting a sense that they just decided, oh, we're just going to throw in an escort mission here where you move a card around for no good reason. Its placement in the mission order doesn't make sense where it is, as we were going down through these, putting them into each category and looking at what was the progression between each one of them and how they got more challenging throughout the game. And that is something that I got to give major props to the game designers.
Yeah, I mean they've covered such a broad range of different types of gameplay. And building off of what Greg was saying before. So, in one mission you'll be inside the mech, and in the next you'll be out of the mech. But even in some even say for mission 1 to 2, in the first mission you're just shooting enemies. In the second mission you're shooting spherical balls, and that requires it's more like playing pool or something like that, and that requires a complete rethink of how you use the pre-existing mechanics.
What your shooting does.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Like your shooting takes on a brand new function, and so you need to extend your way of thinking about something that you're already that you're slowly getting to grips with in your learning and mastery of this game. And yeah, I think the main takeaway is that this game is fresh. Like the campaign, there's no two missions back to back that are the same. Even within the missions themselves, there's a lot of variation. In that sometimes there are more than one type of category, more than one type of gameplay within the one mission. And in that sense, it's really rich and refreshing. The one thing that we didn't talk about is the fact that you don't play the mission in any order either, do you, Adrian? You can actually sort of choose your own path, kind of.
Right. The missions are numbered, but you often get pairs of three, and even at one point you actually have 6 available missions you can do in whatever order you like. The boss missions, I believe, yeah, it's the boss missions where things funnel back into a single mission that you need to complete in order to unlock the next batch of missions.
Linchpin nodes.
Yes, that's a good name. That's a good word for it. Thank you for that.
And so I think as well, it's that sort of freedom in how you progress, which kind of also makes it difficult for us to really pin down and discuss the overall, mission to mission flow because, players may not play through the missions in numbered order.
But it's also complementary to the variety of the game where, because all the sphere missions aren't in a row, it makes sense that you can pick what mission you might want to do next, because it's not like you're going to pick one mission and then you should have, gotten the tutorial from the other mission.
I'm not quite sure what you mean there, sorry.
So if the 3 sphere missions were all in a row and you could choose which one to do first, and you pick Convergence, you wouldn't have the lessons from Hardball.
Yes.
Or you wouldn't have the familiarity from Hardball. So you are able to get that wide mission selection because the missions that have to do with each other typically aren't next to each other.
Okay, I see what you mean. So it's like there is freedom, but you can choose for more than one mission, or one gameplay type at a time.
Yeah.
However, the tiers, if you think of it as being in tiers, each tier of missions teaches the player what they need to know for the next tier. And actually, that would be really interesting because I know that the mission select screen is sort of organized in a sort of tier fashion. It'd be interesting to look at each tier and to see how many of each type of gameplay are on each tier, and maybe there's a pattern there. Yeah, so I think that wraps up our discussion on the campaign mode in Metroid Prime Federation Force. Of course, we still have a lot more to say. I think we will probably be talking about some of our favorite levels, some of the levels of cooperation within the different types of missions, and there's a lot more to talk about. So thank you for joining us, and stick around for the ride. Should be fun. 3, 2, 1.
Over here.
Okay.